My special guest today has been behind the drum kit for over 30 years, keeping a beat for so many respected names in the music business. He's been involved in theatre, both as an actor and on the production side of things, and is also the founder, of the most authentic beat combo to come out of Liverpool since the early 60s. The Shakers were also the resident house band at the world-famous Cavern Club in Liverpool. It's my pleasure to welcome to the show Mr. Tony O'Keeffe. How are you doing, my friend?
All right, Joe, how are you?
I'm good. It's been a while. What's been going on?
Well, not much in the last 14 months, to be honest.
I know, it's been crazy. I speak to everybody every week. Most of the guests are saying the same thing, everyone, especially the music and the sports people, trying to get back to normal, Tony, what age did you start out and what made you choose the drums?
I got interested. I started out on guitar when I was about 9. And somewhere in my mid-teens, I got interested in the drums because I wasn't progressing very far with the guitar. And I got obsessed by them, to be honest with you. And but my folks couldn't afford to buy me a full drum kit, so they bought me a snare drum, a cheap one. And that kept me going for years until I left school and then got a job and could afford to buy a second-hand kit. Within 6 months, I was in a band gigging all around the Northwest and London and everything. So I haven't stopped since, apart from this last year or so,
You're around the clubs of Liverpool?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, the Northwest, yeah.
Now, you formed the Chain Gang in the mid-80s, right?
Yeah, 86, yeah.
Talk about that band, how it started.
Funny enough, it started over where you are, over in America. It was, I went for the first time to LA, and I saw a couple of bands while I was there, and I realised that the bands over there were still quite rock and roll, but over here, it'd gone very sort of electro pop and Stockake and Waterman type stuff, and I just wasn't doing anything for me. I'd been doing that 80s pop thing.
Right.
I was just getting a little bit like, it's getting a bit bland now, and I wanted to do something a little bit more up-tempo. So having seen the bands over there, it made me come back and want to do something similar, something a bit more rock and roll, more me. And so I put this band together and just recruited a few people. And from like the first couple of gigs, we did like warm-ups, and by the third gig we had management and we were playing for record companies. And
so that was your first band? The Chain Gang was your first band?
No, I'd been in bands for since 1980. Okay. This was 1986.
Right.
But within months of forming the bands, we were sort of signed and on tour and stuff like that, because it was so different at the time, because everyone was doing the sort of pop thing, and while there was a pop edge to what we did, it had that black leather rock and roll thing underpinning it.
Well, I remember you at the firehouse. I remember you at the fire station in Bootle. But in them days, it was send your tapes in, get a record deal.
Well, yeah, I mean, we started at the firehouse because we knew the guys there and we played in previous bands. And the third one, Ian McNabb came down with his manager, the third gig.
Yep.
And basically after that, his manager was in touch with, I've got this record company who's interested in you. Can you sort of rehearsal out? And next thing, we were on tour with the Icicle Works and various other people, and sort of all snowballed from there.
Ian's one of Liverpool's treasures. A fantastic songwriter. Still putting albums out there. I've just got his new one. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to play a Chain Gang song, okay? This is the Chain Gang, More Than a Dream. Should have been more easy. That's the Chain Gang, More Than Just a Dream. If you're just tuning in today, my special guest today is Mr. Tony O'Keeffe. He's the drummer with that band, formed in the mid-'80s. Now, you toured with Mr. Lemmy Kilmister and Motorhead.
Well, we did a few gigs, yeah. He came to see us when we played the Marquee in London. He loved it, and he was just like, came backstage and was talking to us. And the next time we played there, he came down with his manager. Same thing again, brought his manager along, and all of a sudden we were doing gigs with him.
Really?
With the bands and with girls' school as well, sending us LPs and one thing and another, you know. So
what was Lemmy like? Because he's the ultimate rock star, wasn't he?
Well, he was brilliant. He was so down to earth, you know. And he bought me a drink at the bar, and he was talking about Merseybeat and said he used to live in Liverpool, used to go down the cavern and watch the bands and the Beatles and the Searchers, and he loved them, you know.
Yeah.
So he knew his stuff. He knew what he was talking about, and that was the thing. He knew about rock and roll, regardless of whether it was, you know, modern or old or whatever. He knew his stuff, you know.
That must have been an adventure, that though, yeah, doing some gigs with him.
Every time they played up here, you know, we were always on the guest list to go and see them backstage, having a drink with them and all that, you know. So yeah, he was even years later. I hadn't seen him for years, and his last time I saw him in Liverpool. And I went up to him afterwards, and he was sitting in the bar, and I said, "I don't know if you remember me, you know." And he did. He said, "Sit down, have a drink."
Really?
It's great, you know.
Yeah, he's from the Midlands, am I right?
He's Stoke-on-Trent, and Colwyn Bay. He lived when he was a kid, you know. And when he sort of became a bit old, he said he moved to Liverpool, lived in Notty Ash of all places for a while. Yeah.
Ken Dodd town.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Actually, we were talking about Doddy a couple of weeks ago because I had John Martin on the show. You know, John, Liverpool comedian, and he was a writer for Ken Dodd. Yeah. How long was the Chain Gang going for, Tony?
It was only about 2 or 3 years, because we got signed to Chapel Publishing for our songs, and we record after we did the EP. They put it out on their label, and then we did an LP, recorded an LP, and then Warner came in, took over Chapel Publishing, who were dealing with us, and basically sacked the staff and brought their own staff in. So all the people that were looking after us were gone. And with that and a few other things, it just sort of petered out a little bit then, you know. We all moved on to other things, you know. We're
going to end on the Chain Gang bit. We're playing another song. And you were talking about Ian McNabb before. I think you told me Ian sang on this song.
Well, he produced the EP.
Okay.
And then on the last one, he did the little backing vocals on the way out. When we weren't there one night, he just added little bits to all the songs.
Oh, really?
On this next one you're going to play, I think it might be Riding Down the Line.
Riding Down the Line, that's right, yeah.
We come in, and the following day after recording it, and there was a slide guitar on it, which we'd never had normally, but it was Ian who put the slide, so he's playing the slide guitar on this.
The Chain Gang, featuring Ian McNabb, Riding Down the Line.
Someone's got my number.
chain gang riding down the line. Who was your lead singer in that band, Tony?
A guy called John Geno. He was with a band called DDA Seeks around Liverpool, who were quite sort of...
I remember DDA Seeks, yeah, because
Yeah,
I mean, we spoke earlier about the fire station. There was so many bands on the firehouse. I used to go there all the time. I did hear the slide guitar there, by the way. That's Ian McNabb on slide and the vocals at the end. So after the chain gang, you joined Kappa. And anybody listening or tuning in, especially from Liverpool, will know Mr. Paul Kappa, fantastic guitarist and showman extraordinaire.
Yeah, he was, well, after the chain gang, I did do a few gigs with Paul because I knew him from the firehouse, you know.
Yeah.
But I didn't actually join his band until 2001, so quite a few years later. Just started working with him and literally just took off. You know, the gig situation, we were working virtually 5-6 nights a week. So I did that for about 4.5 years, and then the thing with the Shakers, it was an ambition I just wanted to do. I'd done little 60s things in the past, but I wanted to do it properly. I wanted to do it like it was done then, rather than just...
Well, it was 2005, right? You formed the Shakers.
That's correct, yeah.
Well, you know, I've had the pleasure of watching the band many occasions down at the Cavern, and the sound is so authentic. It truly is. It's Merseybeat born all over again. Even Merseybeat and HAMBURG legend Kingsize Taylor said after seeing you guys, I haven't heard a sound like that since the Star Club in 1962. That's a hell of a compliment.
Well, it is. I mean, we've had lots of great compliments from people who were around at the time, you know. But that's, I mean, we played with a lot of them as well, backed a lot of them, and... You know, we try and do that. We try and give them what they sort of remember, because a lot of the 60s bands now, they tend to be have a more sort of slick, modern sound, which is great and everything. You know, the audiences probably expect it, but we played at the Searchers on the last tour, and to the 60s weekends, and they were on, and it just didn't sound like the Searchers to me. You know, it was too modern. And we sounded more like the Searchers than the Searchers, but that's because we try and play it like it was done then. You know?
What made you think of this, put this project together?
It goes back a long way to the 80s, probably. I mean, I've always loved Merseybeat since I was a kid, you know, playing the Beatles, the Searchers and all that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I saw a couple of plays in the Playhouse. About the time the current Cavern opened in 84, and it was a play called Cavern of Dreams about a fictitious Merseybeat band, you know.
Was that the one with Drew Schofield in?
Yes, that's correct.
I remember
that. But the sound they got on stage was like really authentic, and I thought that's what it should sound like, you know.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, I found out of a band from London called the Rapiers, who did like more pre-Beatles British beat, and again they were really authentic, and I saw them in the 90s, and you blew me away because it was so authentic, the way they looked, the way they sounded, the instruments. And then I found out another band from Scotland called the Kingsize, who did that HAMBURG thing as well, really authentic. I thought, I want to do something like that, that's more like that than sort of general 60s, you know. And that's where the influences came. So that's why when I came to do it, I wanted to do it that way, and not just like a cabaret version of whatever, you know.
As you say, you do it the right way. You all look the part, you know.
Our bass player even now, Kevin, his bass is the same model as Stuart Sutcliffe's. Wow. And it's even from the same batch. It's like about 3 serial numbers away from Stuart Sutcliffe's. It's that authentic. Really? You know? All my drum kits are all authentic, 60s, old ones, you know, everything. So the sound is there, you know.
Let's let everyone hear that sound, because you've got a single called Hi-Fi Baby. The Shakers, Hi-Fi Baby.
Hi-Fi baby, so fine, so fine, so fine. Come on, dare let you be mine, mine, be mine. I need your love, I need it slow. Need it slow, need it slow. I change my mind, I'll let you know. Let you know, let you know. Hey, hi-fi, baby. Strictly hi-fi. Where you say hi when passing by. Passing by. And where you look, I almost die. I think I lost my heart to you. To you. You said me down. Strictly high-five. High-five, baby, I don't know. You won't love me, but you won't let me go. Well, now, baby, can't you see? You can be high-five with me. You're high-five. strictly high five. High five, baby. I don't know. You won't love me, but you won't let me go. Oh my baby, can't you see? You can be high five with me. Your high five, your high five, your high five. High five, baby, so fine, so fine, so fine. Oh, for that that you be mine, I need your love, I need it so. I change my mind, I let you know. We're high five, baby. Strictly high five. We're high five, baby. Strictly high five. We're high five, baby. Strictly high five.
That was pure Merseybeat reborn there, folks. That was the Shakers, Hi-Fi Baby. Did you write that one?
No, actually, it's an old obscure one from America, a band called the Doorknobs in the mid-'60s. And it wasn't that well known over here, but the record company V-Tone gave us a couple of songs and said, we'd love to hear you do versions of this, you know. So we did, and that's where it came from, you know. But we thought we could do a really good Merseybeat version. Because what happens, obviously, when the Beatles broke in America, a lot of bands then started copying the sound and the look and everything. And it went right through to the garagey scene in the sort of late 60s. So this is one of the obscure bands that copies that sort of sound, but we made it a bit more Liverpool and Mersey, you know.
Well, that's another great thing about your set. You do a lot of B-sides and stuff. I've watched you play. That's why I didn't recognise that song, but you just make it your own. You know, you actually took it and just made it your own and recreated that Merseybeat sound. I love the claps on that. It's got a little touch of a soda stand in there.
Yeah, well, we sort of take all the tropes of the sound, you know, and we put them in, and that's what gives it its sound, you know, the way we play, obviously. But I mean, we try and make it, you know, put all the little hooks in there as well.
I suppose you can't wait to get back because the band's full of energy. I mean, I've been to the Cavern so many times, the pub and the club, and seen you play. But with the Shakers, you know, you've backed Mersey legends like Mike Pender, the Searchers, Billy Kinsley, the Merseybeats. Talk us through some other legendary Mersey names you've worked with, because I know you've worked with so many.
Well, yeah, quite a lot. I mean, in the early days, the Kingsize Taylor quote, you know, we actually ended up backing him on a few things, and we got the name, a little sort of thing from the early days. I got the name from Kingsize Taylor because when they were in Hamburg, he was big in Hamburg, and he stayed in Hamburg, and he had a record deal with Polydor, but he had a habit of just signing contracts with anyone, even when he was signed to someone else. So he did an album for another company, and because they couldn't call themselves Kingsize Taylor because he was already signed, they called themselves the Shakers for one album. And that's where I got the name from. Okay. And then we started playing the Cavern, and he was hosting the nights, and I said to him, well, we're called the Shakers after you. And he went, oh, great. And for our very first gig, was down a private function down in Gloucestershire, and we didn't have a PA even, and he lent us his PA to do the gig. Wow. So sort of ties, you know. And then we ended up doing a few gigs with him, and I backed him quite a few times in the early days, you know. Yeah. So yeah, it's a little link. You know, I wanted something I had a link with the time back then, and that's got a little bit of history to it, you know. Yeah.
Which other names have you worked with from that era?
Oh, we've backed Beryl Marsden quite a few times. Obviously, as you say, Billy Kinsley, Mike Pender, Terry Sylvester, who was in the Escorts, and Swinging Blue Jeans, and then the Hollies. Oh, right. Who else? Ray Ennis from Swinging Blue Jeans had backed him, and even people like Tommy Rowe and Chris Montez, you know, James Burton, worked with them all.
You forget that these people are still going. You know, you look at them early records, and then, you know...
Well, yeah, I mean, the Merseybeats are still going. They still do quite a lot of work, you know. Yeah. Blue Jeans work occasionally with Ray, you know, so it's... yeah, I mean, it's great to work with these people whose records you're actually playing in your set, you know.
Fantastic,
and people, you know, it's amazing.
When did you become house band at the Cavern?
I worked there as a resident musician with Paul Kappa. Right. So I was known in the Cavern anyway, and I just said, well, I've got this new band that can have a few gigs, and they gave me a few gigs. And once we proved ourselves, then we within a year or so, we had a residency, you know. We've been there ever since.
Do you remember you and me playing the Cavern one Saturday afternoon?
That, yeah, playing some of your stuff, yeah.
That was you on drums, obviously. I fronted it, and we had Keith Holden on bass and Tommy Bowden on guitar.
That was good, that.
Yeah, some people down from London, and it didn't quite work out, but it was... I didn't want to showcase on my own. I wanted to showcase with a band, and I wanted to bring that up today because thanks for doing that, you know, because it's...
Welcome, mate, yeah. Well, the thing was, at the time, the Cavern used to put on all types of bands, you know, before it sort of became more streamlined with the heritage thing, and they still have new bands on.
Yeah.
But in the front stage, it tends to be mainly the resident bands who play what's related to the Cavern, so it's a lot more streamlined business-wise to that, the Cavern's history now, you know.
Yeah.
But they have the new bands in the back and things like that, so there's still, as they say, one hand in the future, one foot in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it gets back to normal soon, especially, you know, I know the Cavern have been doing a lot of virtual stuff recently or so.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I was in there yesterday for a meeting and, you know, about what's going to happen, but it all depends on the government's restrictions being lifted in June. So we're hopefully going to be back, you know, when that happens, but it all depends what sort of level it's at really then.
Okay.
But we will be back. We will be back.
Yeah, I've got every faith in it. Let's play another track because talking about the Shakers making songs their own, you've done a beat version of Fever. How did that come about?
It was a version we'd heard by Trini Lopez, but this was more of a sort of slightly slower, you know, but it had a nice feel to it, and we thought that transfer quite well, you know, to what we do. Yeah. And make sort of, it's almost brand new Cadillac-ish in its feel, you know, so we just took that and ran with it and made it our own, and speeded it up a bit, and yeah, it's the B-sides of the single, which is a vinyl single, you know.
You can actually get this on vinyl, yeah?
Yeah, it's on Fetone Records, who do loads of great rock and roll stuff, you know. And they've done stuff for the Cavern compilation LPs of all rock and roll and blues and stuff. And yeah, they asked us to do a single, so this is it.
Do you choose most of the stuff?
Normally, yeah. I mean, the set lists and that, pretty much.
I say that because you put the band together. It was your brainchild.
Yeah.
And I was just curious if you had a big hand in, you know,
well, yeah, because
repertoire.
I know the way I want it to come across, so I know I don't want to just do completely all the big hits and that. I want it to be in a pretty, you know, authentic way, so we have to do something a little bit different as well. I don't want to be the same as the band, so that's precisely what we try and do. So we try and do something a little bit within the hits and all that. We do something a little bit less well known. So stuff like this is great to do because no one's doing it, you know.
That's what I mean. It's so different, yeah, and it's so fresh, you know. So let's hear the Shakers, their version of Fever.
Never know how much I loved you, never know how much I cared. When you put your arms around me, I get a fever that's so hard to love. You give me fever. When you kiss me, fever. When you hold me tight, fever in the morning and a fever all through the night. Sun lights up the daytime, moon lights up the night. I light up when you call my name, and you know I'm gonna treat you right. You give me fever. When you kiss me, fever. When you hold me tight, fever in the morning and a fever all through the night. Everybody's got the fever, that is something we'll know. Fever ain't such a new thing, fever started long ago. You give me fever. Yeah, Romeo loved Juliet, Juliet she felt the same. When he put his arms around her, he said, Juliet, you're my flame. You give me fever. When you kiss me, fever. When you hold me tight, fever in the morning and a fever all through the night. Yeah, now if you've listened to my story, that's the fun that I have made. Chicks were born to give you fever, Fahrenheit or centigrade, they give you fever. When they kiss you, fever if you live and learn. Fever till you sizzle, or a fever till you start to burn. What a lovely way to burn, baby, what a way to burn. What a lovely way to burn.
Great stuff, Tony. Honestly, that's fantastic arrangements. And
it's got a bit of a surfy feel to it, you know. Because I love all that stuff, all that instrumental surf stuff, you know. It's great. So there's an element of that in there as well.
The way you were talking earlier about how modern, you even said the Searchers sounded so modern when you work with them. The guitar work there, that's so going back there. You know, that's 1960, 1962 right there.
Well, our lead guitarist, Liam, he's although he's younger than the rest of us, he's got a really good, authentic sound, you know. And Ian, who sang that one, who produced it as well, he recorded it. Again, you know, we're all into that thing, and that's the thing. We're all into the same sound.
Yeah.
The guys that are in the band now are just amazing, you know, for that, getting that feel straight off the bat. You know, you don't have to try and explain anything. Everyone just gets it straight away, and which is great, you know, for what we do. You know, it's just natural chemistry, you know.
Yeah. You can't beat that, you know.
And they were played live in the studio, you know, apart from the few overdubs, but the backing track were all played together in the studio. So warts and all, that's how it went down, you know.
I was actually going to ask you that because to get that sound, I mean, I can't imagine doing a click track and a rough track and then the drums, then the bass, then the guitar, was something like that, you know.
The basic guitar, bass and drums went down all together, you know.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, in the later years, I remember when the Duets album of Sinatra came out, watching an old interview with Phil Ramone. And Phil Ramone said, he said to Frank, I think it'd be great to get modern day artists duetting with you. And he said, why should I? Sinatra, why should I? He said, I think it'd be a great idea. So they had a meeting and he tried it out in the studio. And he just couldn't get his head together, the headphones on. And it's been so long since he'd done it. And then he come up with the idea. He stormed out, and Phil Ramone came up with the idea of putting the actual orchestra in the studio. So it was just like he was on stage, and then it just come together. Duets 1, Duets 2.
The thing is, it's a feel thing, and I mean, people have said to us, you know, during this last year or so, why don't you do live streaming? Well, it wouldn't work because we're so reliant on an audience, and the feedback we get from an audience, it inspires us, and it's a two-way street, you know, and it's the same thing. It's like, unless you're playing together, playing to nobody, that's a rehearsal, that's not a gig.
I know, yeah. I know
what you're saying. It works for some people. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying for us, we need an audience, you know.
Yeah. Let's talk about your acting and your theatre stuff, because I know you've been involved in many productions and various plays. How did you get involved in the theatre stuff, like the acting roles?
Yeah, it's something I've always been interested in, but I didn't actually. I ended up going to college on an acting course, and then sort of that was about 2 years, and we covered all sorts from acting to backstage and all that, and I just really loved it, and ended up doing it from then. You know, I got a professional gig at the Everyman, playing Pete Best from the Beatles. And
oh, you did? You played Pete Best?
Yeah, I played Pete Best, and actually the guy who sang Fever then, who's in the Shakers now, he played Paul McCartney in the show.
Oh wow! I didn't know.
Yeah, so that's how we met for that, and so from that, then I just started doing loads of other stuff. You know, joined different companies, and you know, and I still just keep my hands in doing it whenever I can. You know, diary permitting with the band and all the rest of it.
Yeah. But you've got a brand new production you've been putting together called "This Is Merseybeat," the musical. Talk us through that.
Well, it's the Merseybeat musical, as I say, and basically it's the Shakers on stage, but instead of just playing the songs all ourselves, you know, it's more of a theatrical setup with, and it is a theatre show. It's very much a theatre experience. We have like a compere who's an actor. Going back to Cavern of Dreams, he was in Cavern of Dreams, so it's a nice tie-in.
All right.
Tells the story and acts as a sort of 60s compere, Bob Wooler type, you know.
Yeah.
And we have a girl, Victoria Jones, playing Scylla, and a guy called Paul Malloy playing Billy J. Kramer. And we were due to have Gavin Stanley from the West End playing Rory Storm at the last show, but it got cancelled because of COVID. So it's a flexible show where we can move songs in and out or bring different artists on, you know. But again, it's an expanded version. We have a keyboard player so we can get the strings and things for certain songs, or so we try and get the recorded sounds, but it still has that authenticity, you know. We have the suits and all the rest of it.
Well, did you put this together pre-COVID? You started on the project then?
Oh yeah, I'd had the idea for years, and I eventually put it together in 2018.
Okay.
We did our first show, and it's basically an expanded version of what we do in the Cavern, you know.
But you are hoping to do it again, right? When
Oh yeah, I'm
again.
contacting theatres at the moment. You know, I'm just trying to get some work in for 2022, really. So it's difficult with theatres because they've had a lot of shows cancelled, and they get the backlog is getting put back in now. You know, so you get shoved to the end of the queue and things like that. And I'm not a producer; I'm a musician. You know, so it's difficult. But
it's funny because even here, I mean, I'm in Texas, and we opened again in October where I'm working at the beginning. So I've been doing gigs again since beginning of October. And it was 25% capacity. Then it went to 50% capacity. Now we're at 100. And
right.
Everyone's coming in now. You know, a lot of people have had the vaccines and stuff. But the theatres are still not open.
No, well, they're just opening now. But again, it's socially distanced in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
It's difficult to put a show on with a large cast. I mean, we've got, I think, 9 in the company.
Yeah.
And to pay everybody and pay all the expenses of the theatre, you know, and things like that, at a reduced audience level, it's difficult to make ends meet. So, you know, we need it to be back full time before we can really get back and do it properly. But it's another avenue for the Shakers, really. You know, we've got the Shakers as a band, as a group, doing those 60s weekends and the Cavern. And then we've got the theatre show, which is an expanded version, which is more sort of theatrical, you know, and telling a story, you know, which is great.
Even though there's so many Beatle tribute bands and stuff, but there's a theatre here called the Tobin Centre, and Paul McCartney actually did it in 2014. I got to see the show. 1,750 seats, that's all it holds. And I got in and I watched the show. But I'm sure you know Gavin Pring, friend of mine.
Yeah, I know Gavin, yeah.
Well, Gavin, I've seen Gavin's band there, and it just reminded me then when you were talking about how you have a compere in your show. You have somebody playing Silas, somebody playing Billy J. I don't know if you've ever seen their production, but I've seen them out here, and they have an Ed Sullivan guy who just makes the show. You know, it's just... The guys are unbelievable. They're fantastic as the Beatles, but the comedy in it and the thought that's gone into that as well. So I know what you're talking about there, putting a theatre show on rather than just doing a gig.
It's got to be something a bit more than that. It's got to be like the group plus, you know, it's telling a story, which is, I mean, what we do in the show, it's sort of inherent in the show we do, but there's no actual story. We don't start at the beginning and go to the end type of thing. Yeah. But in the show we start in the Cavern in 62. We play all the rock and roll and everything. The second half is all like when it's broken big and it's on the theatres with the screaming audiences and all the rest of it, and the TV shows. So you can see the story developing of Merseybeat, you know, and then obviously at the end it goes, after that it just gets massive. All the other bands come into play and the British invasion kicks off in America and all the rest of it. So, but what we do is just a bit before it hits America, you know. And
you wrote this?
Yeah, I scripted it basically because I know the story and I know me stuff type of thing. So I just put a little sort of show together based on the story, you know. But it's a loose thing. It's not like dragged down too much in dialogue, but there is that story there, so you can follow the narrative through the show. Yeah. Whereas what we do with the Shakers, we play all the songs and we give a little bit of info about the songs, you know. But it's just generally we try and differ that every week, you know. Yeah.
Did you ever do anything with Pete Best at all?
I've met him a few times, but not actually done anything with him. We played the Casbah once, which was fun, you know.
Because his brother runs that, right? Rogue,
that's right. Yeah. Rogue, yeah. He's got the museum now in Matthew Street, which is great. All the authentic stuff in there.
Oh. Do you know what? I did a show a few years ago in the Bitter End in New York.
Oh, yeah.
I used to play last time I did it was 2 years ago, but I used to play the singer-songwriters nights there. And I happened to be on this night. It was packed, a summer night. It was a summer night in New York, and there was a guy in the front, an American guy, come over to me. He said, "Are you really from Liverpool?" Yeah. And he was a close friend of Pete Best's.
Oh, right.
And he was telling me Pete Best used to play Kenny Castaways, which is knocked down now in Greenwich Village. But we had a good chat and a drink after the show, and he was a close friend of Pete Best, and he used to play in the village,
Since Pete's been playing again, he's done a lot of tours of America, hasn't he? He does a lot over there. So, so I think it's good that he's got something out of it at the end, you know. Yeah,
because it went on for years, didn't it? I think once the anthology come out,
that's right.
That's when he started, you know, people realised the actual stuff he played on in the early days and recordings and stuff, and Yeah, you know. But Tony, it's been a pleasure, my friend. Great to be in touch again.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you for joining us. But just tell us before we go, what's the best platform again for people to get the Shakers single?
Just go to V-Tone Records website or catch them on Facebook.
And they will ship. It's all on vinyl. It's downloads as well, or just vinyl?
Get a download as well, yeah.
Okay.
But it is vinyl, a limited edition vinyl as well. Just like the band, very authentic, very old.
Tony, thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you're back thrilling audiences again real soon. Best of luck with This Is Merseybeats, and it's been great talking to you, mate, and being in touch again. Tony O'Keeffe, everybody.
Yeah. Cheers, Joe.
Tony,
Thanks,
cheers,
mate.
Thank you, mate. Bye-bye. Thank you.